How's it going, guys? Today I want to tell you about a team that has surpassed a lot of expectations this year. That would be the Minnesota Timberwolves. Minnesota currently sits with a 42-32 record, where at the moment they're just one game away from being a lock for the playoffs rather than being in the play-in. And while they may end up as a play-in team this year, they're not just some mere play-in team. No, the Timberwolves are a silent team that has snuck into the ranks of a very competitive playoff race. They sit with 42 wins right now, when last year they only had 23 total. Many people expected this team to fail to make the playoffs again, with high preseason estimates only expecting them to win about 35 games. So today we're going to take a look at what this team has done between this year and last, as well as look at their current roster and see just how this team may cause a huge first round upset. Before we get into the roster, which has actually remained pretty similar to last year, I want to highlight one big change this team has seen in their head coach, Chris Finch. Finch has done a great job in the things that Minnesota has typically struggled with for the past few years. His rotations are much better than Thibodeau's infamous ones. Rather than being a defensive-focused coach, his skills lie on the offensive side, where he has a history working with all-time centers, including a pre-injury DeMarcus Cousins, as well as in stirring the current offense used with Denver and Nikola Jokic. But despite his offensive past, Minnesota has seen a huge improvement on their defense, something they have struggled with for over a decade. Last year, this team was 25th and 28th in their offensive defensive ratings respectively. Now they have moved up to the 6th best offense and the 11th best defense. This is a huge one-year turnaround for a team, like I said, that hasn't gained too many players in 1 year. And while there may not be plenty of new players on the roster, that doesn't mean that this team hasn't seen plenty of player growth over a short time. So let's get into this roster that has made such a sudden turnaround. Things start with Karl-Anthony Towns. Towns for a long time has been one of the top centers in the league, but because the Wolves could never win, he never got the recognition he deserves. Cat has been one of the best centers in the league, and personally I have him at 3 over Rudy Gobert and DeAndre Ayton. His post game is elite. He is one of, if not the best big man shooter in the game, hitting 2 threes per game at a rate of 41% from 3. But what makes Cat special is he can space out the floor while being a legit threat in the pick and roll and in the post. Only a few centers are able to do that, and even guys like Embiid and Jokic still aren't as efficient from outside as he is. He's near 7 feet tall and has an incredibly high release point, meaning he barely even has to jump to be able to get his shot off, and yet most players in the league aren't even able to defend it. Cat is also a pretty remarkable playmaker for his position. From time to time, we see him take the ball up the court, initiate a play, whatever. This is a huge advantage for Minnesota since most centers on the defensive end of things cannot guard the pick and roll on the perimeter. This might also be the best defensive season for Cat's career, although that really isn't saying much. Despite coming out of college being revered as one, he's never really been much of a defender in the NBA. He's far from elite like some of the other centers that I've mentioned, but he has certainly improved on that end of things. But Cat, as you know, he's been pretty good. He's been good for a really long time, yet until this season, he still has only had 1 playoff appearance. So clearly the talent around him is what must be making the difference this year. Well, one of the newest parts of this Timberwolves team is second-year guard Anthony Edwards. Edwards came in as the #1 pick of the 2020 NBA draft, and while he didn't come home with Rookie of the Year, he was clearly one of the best players from this draft class. When he was on the court, Edwards' rookie season was full of highlights, but his big stats and big highlights only went so far. And going into the draft, many questioned Edwards' passion for the sport and if that would eventually make him another bad pick for Minnesota. But Ant has been proving players wrong this year. His play all around has been much better from the year before. His scoring is better. He's taken more attempts at an increased efficiency. His passing has improved. Like many other players on the Wolves, his defense has shown a remarkable improvement. While many scouts called Ant a raw prospect, he clearly has shaken that off and has become an immediate contribution to the Wolves winning and has become one of the best young guards in the NBA. Karl-Anthony Towns, of course, is a great player. Anthony Edwards appears like he's going on that track to become another great player, but for Ant, that's kind of expected when you're a #1 overall pick. But the man who may just be the most or second most important player to the Timberwolves, and a guy who has seen a huge career revitalization, is guard and the new leader of Minnesota, D'Angelo Russell. Russell, for most of his career, has been suffering from not being able to find a consistent home. He's been suffering from not being able to stay on the court or find a consistent role. While his stats may not be the best of his career, some of the play and leadership he's demonstrated on the court has been. First off, this is the first time since his lone All-Star season in 2018 where he's managed to play more than 45 games. This year, he's been playing more like a true point guard, initiating plays, running the offense. Defensively, he's been a leader, calling out rotations and running things in the same way that we see Draymond Green do in Golden State. It's been remarkable to see someone improve in the way that he has given his length in the league. It feels like Russell has lived a whole career already, although he's only 25 years old. D'Lo has found himself as a comfortable role as the third option in this offense, and while his box score stats may not show the huge strides that he has made, his play on the court may be the single biggest improvement we've seen in Minnesota so far. And while I think the Wolves' big three and Coach Finch make up a huge turnaround for this team, I also can't understate this team's depth and the potential that it has to go along with it. At the time I make this, the Wolves bench is 6th in scoring, and they have plenty of guys in their early 20s who are already or are going to become very solid players. Guys like Naz Reid, Jaden McDaniels, Jared Vanderbilt, and Jalen Noel. These are guys who are all pretty young and pretty new to the NBA, but have all been putting up some pretty consistent minutes and generally just playing well for Minnesota. I can't say exactly what the future holds for these kind of guys, but it's definitely promising from what we have seen so far. One player that I do love coming off the bench that I have to mention is Patrick Beverley. Beverley is one of the few new additions to this roster, and it was a real shocker to see him leave Los Angeles. Beverley is a veteran, and he's the oldest player on this young roster. He brings a fire and intensity to this bench and giving the Wolves that culture and that extra factor that they've needed all these years. Now I know I'm not going super in depth on this bench right now, but the Timberwolves have a bench that can hurt you in many different ways, with many of them still being in their early 20s. I'm sure some Minnesota fans are going to tear me up in the comment section, but oh well, I like this team's bench. But the T-Wolves have someone who's in running for the Coach of the Year. They have a young starting lineup that has seen plenty of improvement seemingly overnight. They have a young, hungry core who has created one of the best offenses and defenses in the league. So what's the point of this video? Well, that is because I believe the Minnesota Timberwolves pose the biggest upset potential in the playoffs. The Nets have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, and the Lakers have LeBron and maybe Anthony Davis. Of course, people do see an upset coming, and I'm sure some people are still going to pick those teams to win over whoever they go up in the first round. But the Timberwolves? The guys who won 23 games last year, who have one playoff appearance since 2005, that's a real sleeper team. Now, I honestly don't see them as true contenders. I think they're still a few seasons away from that, but make no mistake, this is not a simple play-in team, and this is not going to be a simple first-round matchup that you're going to forget about. The Timberwolves are a deadly sleeper team who can hurt you when you aren't ready. Minnesota will not be an easy first-round matchup. At worst, I see them going in a close 6-game series, but at best, I see them sending home a contender, shocking the league. If there is one thing that I've learned in all my years of watching basketball, it's that franchises who lose a lot appreciate a win more than anything else. Minnesota finally getting a chance at the playoffs, I know are not going to squander it. While they have lacked an identity, this 2022 Timberwolves team has found it. So watch out for the Minnesota Timberwolves. While I don't think they'll be representing the West just yet, they can certainly ruin a contender's year.